Good evening and welcome to the Cabinet meeting of the 2nd of June. Before we move on to the formal agenda, I want to give notice that we're going to move item 5, the Adult Education Annual Accountability Statement, to the final item of the meeting, as Harinder will be a little late, so I suggested we take that at that point. I also wanted to update colleagues on some very good news. We had a letter from the planning inspector in the last couple of days, which gives a really positive update on the progress so far. Colleagues will recall that we had a letter previously that asked the council to make a number of submissions, perfectly normal, and actually from some people who've been through this process previously, actually perhaps slightly less than you would expect. So we've gone through that process accordingly and really welcome the fact that the planning inspector has responded back to our response, and importantly in there, two things in particular, given us a clear understanding and timescale for a couple of public consultations around the supporting evidence documents and a call for sites, but very importantly, setting out the timetable for the phase 1 hearings, which is great news. And I'm incredibly proud of the work that this council has done since 2023 in making that happen. I want to say a particular big thank you from a cabinet perspective to Simon for all of your work. I know you're supported by other cabinet members and other members of the council, and in particular from an officer perspective and through you, Richard and Adam, particular thanks to Dave Harris and Catherine Smith. And I know they would be the first to say they are part of a team, but teams need leaders. And in both those cases, they have gone above and beyond isn't strong enough. So we're not there yet. There's more to do. That letter is available and is in the public domain. So if anybody wants to see that, I'd encourage people to have a look at that. I know a number of residents and other councillors and other interested parties are looking on keenly as how we approach our local plan. And as I said at the annual council meeting a couple of weeks back, it's now 23 years since Medway Council confirmed to date its only local plan. We need to make sure before we get to the 1st of April 2028 that we've got that in place for the future local authority that will take the place of Medway. So incredible work, but lots more to do. So big thank you for that as well. And then finally, before I move to the agenda, all colleagues would have seen the news in the last 48 hours regarding the horrific murder of Henry Novak. And I think all parts of our community will be thinking of his family in particular at this time. We can see the processes, the independent processes that will now rightfully go forward. Many people would have seen, in particular, released by the Police and Crime Commissioner in Hampshire, the body cam footage, and of course under some potential proposals we may be in the same police force longer term with residents in that area as well. So it's important that lessons are learnt undoubtedly, but of course always our thoughts are with those who have been most directly impacted by that. We'll move on. As I say, the only apology for absence I've got is Harinder will be late, but he will be with us later. Are colleagues happy for me to sign the record of decisions from the 5th of May?
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests and other significant interests? Nobody is interesting. That always makes my life a little bit easier. Okay, let's move on to questions to the Cabinet. Those are in the supplementary agenda. We have 3 questions tonight, 1 public question and 2 member questions. I understand the second member won't be here tonight, but I think Alex will give an answer for that, so we'll get all 3 of those answered well within the time. So I'm very pleased to hand the floor to question A from Onyx. Take a seat and we look forward to your question. And then, of course, you have the ability to ask a short supplementary question. And the question is to myself, so over to you.
As a non-binary resident, I know the leader is a dedicated ally, and I welcome his recent statement of solidarity with the trans community in Medway. However, local solidarity faces a critical national test. The government's proposed EHRC draft code of practice, introduced by his own party's leadership, is overtly trans exclusionary, creating dangerous, unworkable patterns and unworkable barriers in public life. What direct conversations has the leader had with Labour ministers to convey the severe risk this guidance poses to Medway residents? In his answer, can he please include how he will use his position to challenge his party's national policy, as well as protect our community from its enforcement?
Thank you for your question, and thank you for your kind recognition in the first sentence. I'm incredibly proud of this administration's track record when it comes to the issue of equality generally, but specifically in this area. And I was very pleased to join a number of colleagues at the flag raising yesterday. And let's not forget that is not every council in Kent that will be raising the pride flag. In fact, some are very proud not to be raising it. And I think that's incredibly unfortunate that they take that particular position. As regards conversations with Labour ministers, I haven't had a conversation with Labour ministers about this specific issue. As you can imagine, time with ministers is very limited, and certainly from my perspective, I think that this is a conversation which I know a number of residents will be taking up with our 3 MPs. I believe there's a lobby of Parliament coming up soon, and if residents of Medway have got a passion about this, wanting to make sure their voice is heard, I would encourage them to attend the lobby of Parliament. Certainly one of the things I will be doing is speaking to other council leaders from across the country. I know, for example, my friend and colleague from Brighton and Hove, one of the other greatest unitary authorities in the southeast of England, put out a similar statement, and again, that's available on her social media as well. So one thing I suspect will happen is certainly Labour and cooperative council leaders will have the conversations collectively about what more we can do to ensure 2 things. And hopefully this was very clear both in the statement that was put out last week, but also the previous statement when the original judgment was made. And that's about making sure that Medway is truly for everyone, to ensure that whether you work for Medway Council or you receive services from Medway Council, we will ensure that happens in a way where you are valued and appreciated for the human being that you are, and we've been explicitly clear on that, and we continue to be so. So rest assured, this conversation, I say, certainly with other local government leaders will continue, and it's something I know that the whole of this cabinet feels very strongly about, and a number of us, for example, will be there supporting the Medway Pride event in August, and indeed the Medway Pride Awards coming up later in the month. Thank you for your question. Happy to receive a short supplementary question if you wish to bring that forward.
So given that the last review of the Equality Act was 16 years ago, does the leader agree that it's time, and agree with the calls from Lib Dem, Labour MPs, some Labour MPs and Green MPs to update the Equality Act, to review a cross-party review of the Equality Act?
I think most legislation in life should be reviewed on a regular basis. But one of the things which I think does incredibly powerful work are select committees. That's what, it's no secret. I'm a big fan of scrutiny committees here at Medway, and they are based broadly on the concept of select committees in Parliament. I think those environments where you can take a really deep dive into specific elements of legislation, whether that's when it's being looked at for the first time, as we've seen in a number of cases recently, or indeed new legislation being reviewed, as would be the suggestion from yourself, I think those are the areas where actually that cross-party working can be really powerful, not least because people who have got a very specific interest and often knowledge and expertise will be members of select committees. So I hope Parliament does its job in reviewing any piece of legislation, particularly in this area, which I know is important to a number of Medway residents. Thank you for the supplementary. Let's move on to question B. Chris Spalding is here, Councillor Spalding. Your question is for Councillor Simon Curry. Over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Maple. 3 years ago, Network Rail published its control period 7 5-year strategy to maintain, renew and improve the UK rail network for April 24 right up to March 2031. This included upgrading the level crossing at Grain. There is a relief road adjacent to level crossing, capable of ensuring continued vehicle flow in the event of a crossing closure, albeit with traffic control measures in place. Network Rail failed to maintain this relief road to the extent it was and is considered unsafe for vehicles. Because of this, and a complete failure by Network Rail to properly plan the works at Grain Crossing, it was necessary to completely close the crossing, effectively cutting off Grain Village. Grain hosts 2 coma sites, so Medway Council was faced at very short notice indeed with having to implement emergency measures to ensure the safety of local residents. This had a monetary effect to Medway Council taxpayers in actual cost and a considerable amount of council officer hours, not to mention the cost to local businesses. Given the vast majority of this financial impact was caused by Network Rail failings and could have, and indeed should have been avoided, can the portfolio confirm recompense has been sought from Network Rail and when answering states how much has been recovered? Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you for your question. No formal request has been made to Network Rail for reimbursement in this respect of the additional measures put in place during the Grain level crossing works. As colleagues may be aware, it is not standard practice within local authority emergency planning activity to seek cost recovery for multi-agency response or resilience measures, except in very special circumstances, such as oil pollution incidents or certain coma-related planning arrangements. Coma is the control of major accidents, hazards, prevention and mitigation. I mean, basically, it's about making sure that we know we've got plans in place for those major sites where there could be a serious incident. The actions taken in this instance were consistent with our statutory duties to protect public safety and ensure continuity of access for residents. It is also important to recognise that Grain Village presents unique challenges due to its geography, the infrastructure constraints and the presence of these coma sites. As such, contingency planning for disruption affecting the A228 or access routes to the peninsula routinely includes enhanced support arrangements, and the Council acted in line with these established principles. Regarding the specific issues of the adjacent relief road, it should be noted that the land in question was deemed surplus to highway requirements and was formally stopped up in October 2014. This materially affects its status and the Council's position in relation to its maintenance and use. At this stage, I do not have detailed information regarding any costs incurred by services such as traffic management, highways or street works, or whether any of these costs have been separately considered for recovery. Should further information become available, I will ensure it is shared with members. In summary, while the Council recognises the concerns raised regarding the circumstances surrounding the closure, the priority throughout was to ensure the safety and well-being of residents and businesses, and the actions taken reflect that responsibility. And I would just like to add a huge amount of praise for the emergency planning team and all those officers involved who did such an excellent job in keeping the people of Grain Village safe and secure.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curry, and I will second what you said about our council officers because I spent the whole of the Sunday out there and I know we had teams out there all weekend. So thank you very much for the question and the answer.
Thank you very much. and I would also support that. I know a number of briefing sessions were held in the run-up to that. So again, very good work by our emergency planning team, including in particular Taff Morgan, who does an outstanding job for us. Let's move to the third and final question. So the questioner is not here, but happy to hand to Alex for his answer. Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Vince. It's quite remarkable that we've found possibly the only person in Medway who hasn't read or seen me talk in the past 18 months about how we have swapped the failed whack-a-mole approach to road maintenance for a system that offers longer lasting repairs and better value for taxpayers. It's even more remarkable that that person is someone whose job is to pay attention to what I say as portfolio holder, the opposition spokesperson. So we can draw one of two conclusions from the false premise contained in this question. Either he hasn't been listening, or he hopes that members of the public won't understand or see through his fibs. It's primary school level arithmetic to understand that you can't compare apples with oranges. And for a councillor who would like us all to think he's good with numbers, but seems unable to make a value judgment that isn't measured in pounds and pence, it's particularly frustrating to have to explain how to count. But I'll try. As the member surely knows, there are no figures from 10 years ago which can in any way be compared to the repairs being carried out today. The redundant Tory approach of allowing our roads to go to rack and ruin, then trying to score a few headlines by trumpeting a subjectively impressive number of pothole repairs, is over. I won't play that game when we're in a position to not only do things differently, but better. My officers focus on long-term road condition, rather than simply the volume of individual pothole repairs recorded, the pursuit of excellence instead of the measure of failure. As the member surely knows, in the bad old days under the previous administration, defects such as potholes were often repaired individually, with each and every repair counted as a separate intervention, however short-term and misleading that approach was. Now, where we identify clustered defects, typically 5 or more, but sometimes 10 or more in close proximity, we will carry out a single, larger scale, permanent patch repair. And critically, instead of attempting to artificially inflate performance, metaphorically and almost literally papering over the cracks, we now count those 10 or more potholes fixed as one fix. That's not an accounting trick like the one the member would like the public to believe. We do it because this approach addresses the underlying deterioration of the road surface, rather than treating each pothole as an isolated issue. As a result, whilst the number of individual pothole repairs recorded may appear lower to the careless observer, the actual extent and quality of repairs being carried out has significantly improved. Far from carrying out fewer repairs, the overall area of carriageway treated has increased. That's the uncomfortable truth the member is in denial of. These larger, more durable repairs reduce the likelihood of repeat failures, improve overall road condition and resilience, and deliver a better visual and structural outcome for residents, representing better long-term value for money. It doesn't mean we don't intervene where necessary on individual highway defects which meet the threshold, but it does offer an end to the vicious cycle of short-term fixes, squandering scarce budget which can be better deployed by refusing to deal in cheap headlines and cheap politics. For these reasons, it's no longer appropriate to assess performance solely on the number of potholes repaired, as this does not reflect the scale, quality or effectiveness of the work being undertaken. Theirs is a failed approach, which me and my colleagues spent many years in opposition criticising. And when handed the opportunity by the people of Medway 3 years ago to do things better, we have put words into action. In terms of current figures, the number of defects awaiting repair is subject to ongoing inspection, risk assessment and prioritisation in line with our safety-led approach. We will continue to repair all defects that meet our intervention criteria within the appropriate timescales. Looking ahead, our programme for this financial year will continue to prioritise a balanced approach of both reactive repairs and preventative maintenance, with a clear emphasis on permanent, longer-lasting solutions rather than short-term fixes. This ensures we are making best use of available resources while improving the overall condition of our road network.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. a very comprehensive and very full answer. And I know residents will be grateful for that, to hear that in detail. Let's move on. Thanks to all those who have submitted questions. As I say, we're going to leave agenda item 5 till later in the agenda. So we're going to move to agenda item 6, Gun Wharf Improvement Programme Annual Update Report, which is easy for someone to type, more difficult for someone to say. Really happy to hand over to you, Zoe, to open this item.
Okay. Well, by way of explanation, an inspection of Gun Wharf in October 2023 found RAC, otherwise known as reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete in the roof of the building, and as well as in many other public buildings across the country. And that was deemed to be potentially a risk to people within the building. But in addressing the problem with the RAC, it gave us an opportunity for the scope to evolve and to deal with long overdue issues in the building, and to bring the building up to date, to make it sure it's fit for purpose, and to future-proof the building, and to develop its status as an employer of choice. Since the discovery, the majority of staff based at Gun Wharf are now temporarily relocated whilst the works are undertaken, and very limited level 2 access remains for certain staff. There is very limited public access to the building, but the RAC remediation, i.e. the removal of the RAC, is now underway, and the majority of staff being relocated except for level 2, which is still occupied. There is signage outside the building to redirect the public to appropriate sites, and those sites, satellite sites, include Strood Sports Centre and the Innovation Centre. The RAC remediation itself is now completed, but as I say, the discovery of RAC has given us the opportunity to bring Gun Wharf into the future and make it more fit for purpose. Staff have been able to go to roadshows to find out what's happening and where they're being relocated, and comms throughout this process have been excellent. It is an opportunity to upgrade the building and bring it into the future, and we'll be looking at artwork for the building, and risk management has been a significant part of this process as well. This has been a huge achievement, getting to this point over several months now, and we look forward to being able to go back into the building as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Zoe. I'll take Teresa first.
Thank you, Zoe, for your commitment to this, and to all of the teams who have made it possible, because when we came into administration, we didn't know that this was something that we would have to do. But for me, who's had quite a few opinions about the state of Gun Wharf for many, many years, RAC actually was a welcome trigger to making sure that this listed building and place of work for a very large number of people who live in Medway, as well as all of the public who use it, have somewhere decent to go with proper conditions. And I think the way that the tenders were procured meant that we got a huge amount of interest, actually, from local construction companies, because this is interesting work. It's not just a bit of redecoration, it's actually refurbishment of a listed building, so it gives people lots of experience. And I know that local labour and apprenticeships and trying to use as much local materials as possible are all part of the social value of the programme. And I'm very pleased with the way that the property team have managed to secure good accommodation for our staff to decant to, so that they can stay together and get on with their work, and disruption has been minimalised. And having been along to see everybody, I'm really pleased that they're settled and feeling happy and well cared for in their temporary accommodation, looking forward to being even happier and more well cared for when they come back to Gun Wharf. What I've been very clear about with Zoe and directly to teams is that once everyone's moved back in, we must have put a proper programme of depreciation and cleaning and maintenance in place so that we never get to the terrible situation that Gun Wharf found it in. Totally neglected, horrible old furniture and fittings, an unhealthy working environment. It will be a welcoming environment. People have had a chance to have their say on colour schemes and how they feel about proper ergonomic furniture and light and airy areas of work. That's the right way to treat a workforce. It sends a message to local employers that we want everybody to treat our workforce, whoever they are and wherever they are, as well as we can. And I'm really looking forward to the end of the year when we go back in.
Thank you, Teresa. Simon next, then Alex.
Yep, thank you very much. And thank you, Zoe, for your report and for overseeing all the work that's being there in your role as a portfolio. I think this is a very exciting project, something I've mentioned before about treat it as an opportunity, I think, is what's happened here, not making a drama out of a crisis, but getting on, making something good out of it. I think is really, really beneficial to everybody. The building design is going to be focused on the staff and on the public who are going to be visiting there. And that's what this sort of public buildings are all about. It's about the people who work there and also our community who have to come there for whatever reason to reach out to our services. And that's what we're going to have at the end of this process. And it just shows what an excellent team we've got behind the scenes in the place director for all the work that's been done. I've mentioned this before as well, the work on the Brook Theatre, the work at Cossington Park on the new building there, a new care home which is coming our way, and Gun Wharf shows that we've got real project management at scale that we can do now as a council, which is a real sort of beacon of standard really across the whole of the South East. I don't know many other authorities who could carry out major works on major buildings in this way, and so many projects as well, and achieve the results within budget and on time and all the good things that come out of there. So it's a real shine. And just to reassure you, we also have, as a result of the same team of staff, a whole suite of new FM contracts which are now up to date and in place, ready to look after the cleaning and all the other aspects of building management. So there's some brilliant work all round by everybody involved there. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex.
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, I would absolutely want to pay tribute to staff who have adapted to this change in a way that I think from a member's perspective, most would agree has been pretty seamless. And to members of the public, I hope they haven't noticed anything amiss either. And obviously we want to make the council more accessible, both physically and through the improvements we've made to the website through Medway 2.0 programme. And all of these things all contribute to us living up to that promise that when we won power in May 2023, we didn't win power for ourselves. We won power for the people of Medway to turn these buildings over to the people of Medway, places that had been quite forbidding buildings in the past, and actually make them open and accessible. But I think just on another point, I speak, maybe I'm in the minority on this, but as someone who does appreciate the style of architecture that Gun Wharf represents, and I think it's really important that we remember that all buildings require maintenance, and we would expect the same of our house, whether it was built 10 years ago, 50 years ago, or 100 years ago, to require those interventions. And I think that Gun Wharf is no less worthy of those interventions. And actually, when you place this in the context of, for example, another brutalist structure that I'm quite fond of is the Barbican in the City of London. That's about to undergo and close for a 5-year renewal programme that's going to cost in the region of £191 million. In fact, I think that's not even the total bill. That's simply the Corporation of London's contribution towards it. So placed in context of a similar vintage of building, I think this represents really good value for money, and to provide a practical working space for this authority as somewhere that could be a working space for future authorities. I think this is not discretionary expenditure, it would be remiss of this administration in charge of a listed building not to care for it. And actually, it puts in perspective the failure to do that previously. I think that perhaps if a little bit more care had been put in over the past few decades, maybe we wouldn't have got to this situation. But we're going to put it right, and I'm really pleased that we are. And I think that's an opportunity for Medway to become a beacon for the renewal of modernist architecture as well. I think that's a great thing.
Thank you very much. I was at the Barbican less than 2 weeks ago, and I went up with one of my friends. It was his 60th birthday present, so happy birthday to him. And I made the point there that building, that complex, it was grade 2 listed the same day as Gun Wharf. Midgeo wasn't playing at Gun Wharf, otherwise I would have watched him there instead. But you're right to say it's grade 2 listed, and that's not us going, this is a nice building, that's an external body taking that view. That brings some pressures with it. It means that absolutely to ensure that it's at the standard that the body that looks after those things would expect. Sometimes replacements, improvements will be more expensive, but that's the price you pay for having a grade 2 listed building. And it doesn't matter if it's 50 years old or 350 years old, you've got to do the right thing. And I think the majority of this cabinet do appreciate the brutalist architecture of the building that we know and love as Gun Wharf. Going back to the wider issues here, certainly I wholeheartedly agree with the comments around the flexibility of staff. That has been appreciated, not taken for granted. I know that that's meant some packing up of boxes, moving to another building, and that's been difficult. But actually people have got on with it because they know at the end of this, they'll be coming back to support their residents more closely. And as Theresa has repeatedly said, both in opposition and in control since 2023, there should have been additional resources, because the figure we're now spending may have been less, because if that money had been spent, it had been upkept. Nobody would have known about RAC. I don't blame the previous administration for that. But it is what it is. We would have to deal with that. And Luella and I and Adam were at Mountbatten House earlier today, and they had on there all the different types of concrete there. And I did check with the site supervisor to make sure that none of them were aerated concrete. She said, definitely not, which made me very happy. And it's an amazing building. That's going to be another fantastic, iconic project delivered by this administration. So absolutely supportive of this. Thank you to you, Zoe, for your political leadership on this as well. And certainly the final thing I would say is when it is reopened, of course, we will be doing meetings like this there. We'll be having all of our other council meetings there. But really importantly, as I think Alex made reference earlier on, this will be everyone's building, not just the council. It will be Medway's building. It will be in Medway. The council in 2 years' time won't be Medway Council, but that building, which is publicly owned, will be in Medway, and therefore the access, the likes of which we've never seen at that building. It's, the previous administration were clear. It wasn't for the public. We're a different administration. We're taking a different approach. And I look forward to lots of community groups being able to sit in the council chamber and get their business done as well. So that's going to be fantastic. Zoe, back to you.
Yes, I'd just like to applaud the hard work, in particular of the property team and the work that they've done, but also the cooperation of all of our staff in terms of being relocated to the various offices that they're in temporarily. So I think we should give a round of applause to all of the staff for this.
Thank you very much indeed, Zoe. Are the recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Let's move on then to agenda item 7. That sits with me. I'll move the recommendations as laid out in paragraph 1. I'll draw members' attention to actually, and colleagues may wish to speak about specific performance monitoring from Q4. I want to focus for a minute or two on the strategic risk summary and the 4 changes that we're making, and that's in paragraph 6 on page 63. And just talk to those for about 10 seconds on each. So one of the risks is proposed to be removed from the summary, and that is around the Gun Wharf building closure. The decision has been decided to de-escalate that for exactly all the reasons that Zoe has laid out. A new risk will come forward regarding the ongoing renovation, but that will be separate from the one that's being removed if the proposals are agreed tonight. And then there are 3 small changes. SR 54, recruitment and retention, that will increase slightly from risk from C3 to B2. The meeting the needs of older people and working age adults, that is reflecting the ongoing recruitment and retention and salary issues. That's not unique to Medway. I think it's important to say that. But of course, this is Medway's risk strategy. And then finally, the insufficient budget funding, the risk there is decreasing from A2 to B2. And this is primarily around the multi-year settlement. That's where actually that risk is changing. On the wider One Medway Council plan performance, as is the nature of these things, a number of them have been met and succeeded, over 60%. And of course, there are more challenging areas, particularly those targets where we are more than 5% below where we need to be. And again, colleagues may wish to talk to any of those in their particular portfolios. So I'll pause there. Happy to take any questions. I'll take Teresa first, then Tracy.
Yeah, thank you. And I think those changes are important because it shows that this is a live document and that when the situation changes, we reflect that in this, and it makes the plan more meaningful and gives us opportunities to work on parts of it that are not going green. There's a lot of green in this plan, and that's very welcome. It shows that One Medway approach to the things that are really important for us as a community here. But I wanted particularly to draw attention, partly because we're hearing a lot in the news and across the community about young people who are not in education, employment or training. And on page 102 of the plan, you can see that in Medway, as in common with the rest of our nation, the number of people in that unfortunate situation is growing. And I wanted to really remind people that actually the purpose of having a plan like this and the purpose of monitoring the targets is to enable us to do things, and lots of things have been happened. Tracy, I know that you've been working very hard with schools to think about what they're doing, and as a collective, because we're a Marmot place, the summit that we had about those very young people at the end of April was in fact incredibly successful, and it did 3 really important things in my view that I think are worth repeating and give us an indication of how we hope that this target will change from red to green. First of all, it sent the most important message to young people in Medway that we care about them as One Medway, that we want them to do well, that we want them to have opportunities, and that the future does hold good things for them. And I think that above all the messages that we heard on that day was important. Secondly, with Sir Michael's help, one of the things that was said to me by lots and lots of people, and there were over 100 people at that summit, including people from the Department of Education, it widen the understanding of why people get into that situation in the first place. And lots of people said to me, including colleagues of mine actually from local further and higher education, that they hadn't managed to have an opportunity to think about the reasons why people don't get into employment, education or training. And in fact, the report that we had, Sir Michael's presentation from the work of his work and the work of the Institute of Health Equity really shone a light on that. And thirdly, we decided there were things we could do. We could learn from each other. we could share ideas, we could make the most of the government's programme, and we've heard a lot more about that with the Milburn report and everything that Pat McFadden has had to say. And in fact, Lauren Edwards came along and as one of our MPs, very interested in skills, explained how the work the government were doing, including the hiring bonus to companies for hiring a young person of £3,000 straight away if they've been out of work for more than 6 months. And she got a lot out of listening and being able to feed back to government. So I think one of the benefits of having a plan is that we can use all of the resources of the council and all of the ideas and strategies and things that we are doing together to coalesce around things that are not going so well and make a difference pretty quickly. And I'm very optimistic. You know, we will come together again. The summit was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a story. And I do, for example, congratulate Lee Academy in Strood, who last year managed to make sure that everybody in the sixth form who was leaving wasn't neat. And they were able, for example, to share the things that they had done with their young people to make sure that didn't happen. So, you know, the plan isn't just a document, it's a live representation of the things that we're doing in Medway. It gives us the opportunity to monitor things, and more importantly than both of that, it gives us the opportunity to do things. And I think that what I've just shared is a really good example of why the plan's important.
Thank you. I'll take Tracy next, then Simon, then Luella. Tracy.
Thank you. My comment follows on nicely from Teresa's. We know that the number of children not in employment, education and training is a national concern. I'm actually really pleased that this has become a high priority for our government. It's certainly a high priority here in Medway. We work closely with partners, with our sixth forms, with the colleges, with training providers, people who offer apprenticeships, but we still need more flexibility to make sure that the majority of children, when they reach 16, manage to get their place in the area that they want, either whether that's staying on at sixth form, going on to apprenticeships or doing other training or employment. One thing I do want to point out is if we look at page 78 of the pack, it's the percentage of young people who leave care who are in education, employment and training. Our target was set at 60%, and we've shown a marked increase starting at 57% in Q1, rising to 74% in Q4, well above target, and in fact 10 percentage points above the national average for children leaving care, young people leaving care. And it makes such a huge, huge difference to people's life opportunities when they're able to successfully go on to the further training, the courses and so on that they would like to do in order to further their employment prospects. And a great deal of this is actually thanks to some really innovative working from the aspirations officer, who I really want to congratulate on the work that has been done here. Really tremendous work engaging with schools, colleges, and particularly young people, building up really good relationships, being flexible, meeting with young people in the community rather than more formal interview type sessions, and engaging those people to lead to great success. And I think that's a really good example of how a flexible and innovative approach has led to positive outcomes for our young people leaving care. And we certainly will be looking at how this might be able to be applied more widely to our children and young people in Medway so that we can increase the numbers who are going on to really productive and successful outcomes at age 16.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tracy. Let's take Simon next.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who's had a part in putting this report together. And I said before how good it is to see all these programs of work that we're doing and where they are and whether they're good or bad. We report on them, and it's public knowledge that we have all this out in the public domain. I just wanted to focus on some stuff that's going on in our active travel area. Obviously, we've got plans this summer for free bus for the young people again, like we've done in previous years. We've we've seen the results of the amazing result of having a free bus service over the sweeps weekend, where the buses were full and loads of people got there for free without clogging the roads up with traffic. And that's the kind of thing that this programme of active travel around cycling and walking and public transport, this is the signs that it's starting to really work really well. I just wanted to sort of thank the team, thank the members and officers who are on our active travel group. It's a cross-party group who meet regularly to look at this. And one of the things that's now starting to happen, it feels like a long time ago, but our local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, the LC WIP, was approved early last year. And now, after all the consultation and the bits and pieces and putting together designs, preliminary designs for a number of new routes for cycling and walking, these are reached through the design phase now, and we're looking for the implementation phase to start happening very soon. It takes time to put these major projects together and get things working, but we're really starting to see the results of those coming through. So it's really good to see some of that result. And the important thing about this active travel approach is how much it impacts on the whole community. It's good for the environment, it's good for the economy, and equally it's good for individuals in terms of health and well-being. The ability to travel for free or for a very reduced price, the ability to get out there and walk and cycle instead of jumping in your car, all those health benefits that come out as a result of this will be reflected in the community as the years go on. So this work is fundamentally important in so many different ways to the sustainable growth and development of Medway. So huge thanks there.
Thank you, Simon. I'll take Luella, then Alex, then Nina.
Thank you, Vince. I just wanted to say, actually, as Teresa said, it's not just a document. It is actually a true reflection of what is happening. I agree with that completely. I just wanted to highlight the part that comes on my portfolio where we talk about prevention, because actually our housing needs team with Bex Wilcox, Tracy Partridge and Dan Hill do a fantastic job at supporting residents before they get to the point of eviction. So actually a lot of people get to where they've been given notice and they don't know where to turn, and they come to our housing needs officers who, through various sort of interventions and mediation with the landlords, are able to progress so they don't actually get evicted and they stay in the home that they want to be in. So that is a great service for our residents, but it's also actually helping us financially with the cost avoidance, cost saving of temporary accommodation. And actually in the Q4, it did say just for the savings alone for that period that would have been incurred over the whole year would have been £960,000 it would have cost in temporary accommodation. And also further in the report, it does mention over £2.5 million was saved by our One Medway lettings team for helping households into their secure private rented accommodation rather than having to go down the route of temporary accommodation. So those preventions are really important. And I just want to remind any residents out there that if they get to the point where they're about to be evicted, the sooner they can get in contact with our housing needs team and our housing service in general, that will help them, it will help the council and the public purse. So that's why this report really brings everything together. It's a really positive piece of work. So I thank everyone for their involvement in it.
Thank you. Alex, then Nina.
Thanks, Vince. We found out earlier during the members' questions that Councillor Lawrence was pretty much the only person in Medway that hadn't heard me declare that the whack-a-mole approach to pothole repairs was over. And so if he's missed that, the chances of him having reached page 124 of the agenda is slim to zero, I think. But he really would do well to take a look at the target that has been not only set but exceeded there, and that is in terms of maintaining roads where action should be carried out. In 2024-25, the target was 20% of those roads, and 20% was what we reached. The target for the last financial year was 25%, and we actually reached 36.82%, far exceeding not only that target, but the 27-28 target of 30% of roads. So unlike the fantasy that exists in certain opposition members' heads, the fact is that we are getting on with the job and putting right the years of misrule that went on in relation to roads maintenance and that failed approach of chasing short-term headlines over long-term gains and an upward long-term trend like this. And I would just also say, point out on the preceding page, it's a small thing, but it's really important to people's safety, how reliable Medway's street lighting system is, and that we've done that comprehensive replacement programme to LED lighting, which, as well as delivering savings to the taxpayer, has actually given a more reliable and dynamic street lighting service, which can be dialed up and dialed down as appropriate, whether it's disturbing residents because it's too bright or whether it's encouraging criminality because it's too low. We now have a system which can really adapt to that, and compare and contrast with the situation in other parts of the region of Kent, where street lighting is a thing of the past. That's not the case here in Medway, and I'm really proud of that.
Thank you. Nina.
Thanks. I totally agree with everybody's contributions, but I just wanted to add from my own portfolio. As you can see from the spreadsheet, the customer satisfaction rating for the library service is 100%. How amazing is that? When other local authorities are looking at cutting down services, we are actually increasing our fantastic range of offerings across our libraries. We have our award-winning repair cafe. We've got sustainable initiatives such as clothes swapping. We've got U3A, the most record-breaking number of children participating in Summer Reading Challenge. So many community events happening all across our Medway libraries, as well as our literary events taking place. Fantastic work going on across the libraries, and I just wanted to pay tribute to all the hardworking officers as well as staff members who make this happen. And I'm really proud of that. 100%, come on, I think that should be headline news. The other thing that I also wanted to flag up is, the other initiatives that we are partnering to bring in funding to Medway and support, also through the drop-in surgeries from the culture team to support our local creative community. It has been really well received as well. And I believe that we are having the unprecedented level of support from the creative community, and they likewise say that they feel an unprecedented level of support from the administration. So once again, I just wanted to celebrate that. Creativity, culture is really thriving in Medway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nina, and thanks to all colleagues for their comments. And it's worth saying a couple of things before we move to the vote. Absolutely right and appropriate to recognise some of those greens, which have got even greener, which is a great thing, making those improvements. But of course, as Teresa highlighted, we're not afraid to talk about the reds as well, because we've got to tackle those. And again, albeit that the issue of young people not in education, training or employment is not unique to us. The solutions for Medway have to come from Medway, and the work that's already going on there, through us directly as a council, working with our colleagues in the education sector. Teresa and I and others were at a organisational session brought together by Rotary. So again, our charitable sector and voluntary sector, again, wanted to play their part in recognising this is an issue, not unique to Medway, but one that they want to play their part in tackling as well. So lots done, lots more still to do. And this is a good example of, again, this administration not being complacent when it comes to the outcomes that we have been delivering and will continue to deliver for our communities. Are colleagues happy to support the recommendations?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Let's move on then to agenda item 8, the One Medway Financial Improvement and Transformation Plan Q4 update. I'll move the recommendation as laid out in paragraph 1. Again, I want to thank all colleagues and Richard, through you, the corporate management team, for the work that happens literally every single day using the FIT plan, using the tracker, using the real-time data, which has meant that the process of getting to where we've got to, and it's very clear and transparent for anyone looking on to see where we've made improvements in income generation, where we've made appropriate savings, and where we continue to find those areas, and we'll talk more about that in the next agenda item actually, where we continue to have some stubborn areas, again, not unique to Medway, but we are the ones who are having to deal with those. So huge thank you to colleagues around the cabinet table for your work using the FIT plan. I have no doubt that whatever happens with a local government reorganisation, anybody running a unitary authority should have a data system like this to manage their finances. There's no doubt of that. I think it's important. Of course, it's come to us as part of that process, working with SIPFA and MHCLG, but I would absolutely recommend anyone setting up a unitary, and let's hope there's 4 people setting up a unitary in our region, that they take the learning that we've had here over the last couple of years, because I think that will help them in their financial journey. There's no doubt that it'll be challenging for all of the new unitaries, because running a unitary authority is challenging financially, but making sure you've got the right tools to do the job are important. I'll pause there, see if colleagues wish to raise anything particularly from their areas. Teresa.
Thank you, Vince, and my thanks to everybody who's participated in this. We're well into now, sort of halfway through the 3rd year of this monitoring system that wasn't in place before we came into administration, that staff across the authority didn't have access to seeing where the money goes, and didn't have the opportunity, as they can with this system, to input directly a narrative about what is happening. So in adult social care, what the plan does is enable us to see the savings that we've made and identify where, in a highly complex, huge part of the council's budget, there are things that we need to work on. Currently, looking very carefully at NHS continuing care packages, because there are fewer of them and they're being pushed towards us to look after those very complex and poorly people in a way that hadn't been happening before. Looking very carefully at supported housing, because we know that we're spending a large amount of money and wanting to be sure that those people that we are looking after who are in supported housing actually get the time and resources and help to allow them to move through their milestones in life along with everybody else, as well as living in good quality accommodation. And what that review will tell us is whether we are getting good value for money, and if we are not, we will take arresting action. So I think all of the things here that are going on, the efforts staff have made to modernise, to make savings, absolutely critical. The way that people are not just making savings one year, but carrying on the practice that can ensure those savings become sustainable and long-term in a frankly difficult environment on a huge curve of rising costs and demand. But what the FIT plan has done is help us manage that better, and we'll continue to make improvements, continue to make sure that we get the buy-in from everybody who needs to be part of this, and that everybody gets the support that they need to make the best of this and ensure that the narrative about their ways of working and the way that they are joining in the policy of the council to get to grips with our finances, having inherited a terrible situation, this is one of the ways that I think has been successful in helping us on that journey.
Thank you. I'll take Alex next.
Thanks, Vince. For all a breakdown and nice pie charts and graphs and tables help us illuminate some of the darker recesses of what goes on at a local authority, I think it would be remiss not to also point out some of the context behind those figures. So before certain less than scrupulous members try to portray things in a light that is inaccurate, I just want to point out the fact that the Safer, Healthier Streets programme appears to be more than delivering against targets, and that can perhaps look like a dramatic figure, but it's really important to remember that none of these schemes, for example, red routes, school streets, yellow box contraventions, had an immediate switch-on date. So all of them, because we understand that motorists have to get used to new rules, had a 6-month lead-in time. And that 6-month lead-in time, where first offenders received a letter rather than a PCN, means that there's a bit of a delayed and staggered start in terms of income from PCNs on those schemes. So it would be inaccurate to suggest that all of the increase is a sort of year-on-year change without any sort of contextual explanation. It's a natural lag effect. It's going to continue to happen because we have new schemes coming on stream next week. They will have a 6-month lag period, in fact, an extended 6-month lag period, because the 6-month grace period will not only begin this side of the school holidays, but will then be paused during the school summer holidays and then continue afterwards. So in terms of comparing figures, comparing like with like, I know that certain members really struggle and try to compare apples with oranges, but it's really important that we keep our eye on the ball, that members of the public keep their eye on the ball and don't fall for that trick.
Thank you. Looking to see if any other member wishes to comment on this. No, thank you. Thanks for both those contributions as well. And I think that again highlights the important, not just the being the open and transparent. Of course, there's no obligation on us statutorily to publish this report. We choose to do that. We always said we would be an open and transparent administration, and we've proven that time and time again. But it also shows that the kind of, as you say, Alex, in particular, the granular detail that sometimes is needed to look at kind of the story behind the numbers. And I think you're right in highlighting that in your particular case. So happy to move the recommendations as laid out. Are those agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Let's move on then, and this is picking up some of the additional information that we've talked about there, to item 9, capital revenue outturn and annual debt write-off report. I'll move the recommendations as laid out in paragraph 1. There are quite a lot there, and I'll probably talk to all of those just a little bit to explain what we're doing tonight. Some of those will be recommendations for July's full council. We start from the position of knowing that the finances that we inherited as an administration, and it's worth recognising this, we're not in a good place. We know that. We've spoken about that before. And we will continue to speak about that because, frankly, you can't turn around the financial mess that we inherited overnight. Worth saying as well, we're not unique in that. That is a pressure that we've seen up and down the country. And certainly our specifics is well documented, the 91% cut we had in revenue support grant in this authority from 2010 to 2024 meant some really difficult choices landed with us because the previous administration failed to do so. And as we've spoken about more recently, we know the challenges that we have in our statutory services in particular. So every single day, we're spending £1.35 million on adult services, children's services, and strategic housing, which is predominantly temporary accommodation. All of those services for Medway residents, none of those services any of us would want to access, but absolutely we want to make sure they're the very best they can be for those residents who unfortunately do have to access them. That leaves us with a huge financial challenge, and you can see that within the report that we have here. And I want to thank in particular Phil and his team for the work that they do. Now more than ever, finance is absolutely integrated into the conversations across the council. There's still more to do in that, but I think for me that's a really positive, and I want to thank Phil for his leadership in that area as well. You'll note from the report and its recommendation 1.2 that we've declassified some additional reserves, and that we will, in paragraph 1.3, be making a recommendation accordingly to get to the point of the £10 million for the general reserve, which is the position set by Phil and a position I wholeheartedly support. That is the right position for us to be in. In paragraph 1.4 and 1.5, there are some, I mean, some of these are big figures, but they're relatively minor tidying up exercises from capital schemes which have underspent. So that's good to tidy those things up. And similarly with 1.5, but those are specifically funded through section 106 contributions. And then paragraph 1.6, I don't intend to speak on that in any great detail tonight. That is a fairly standard report that will come here, which we look at, and say it's there for people to see in section 15. The final thing I'd say on this is we've already started the process for next year's budget. Worth saying that as well. We know these are really challenging times, as colleagues may well talk about, particularly those with the statutory responsibilities. Medway is not unique in finding itself in a situation where, through the best management, through the best innovation, the sheer pressure, particularly in our case around temporary accommodation and adult social care, leaves us struggling. And I think that's the only way we can put it, to try and make sure that we get to that point of having the statutory outcome that we need to have, which is what we have here through the recommendation. So look, this is not easy. This stuff continues to be challenging. That said, of course, as an administration as well, we're bringing forward lots of very positive things, often using external funding. I know I'm looking forward in particular to the Pride in Place report, which I think is coming to our next Cabinet meeting, again, working with our Labour MPs to secure £60 million of investment into our community. So these are challenging times. They continue to be. We continue to work hard. We continue to work and respect the work of SITFA. We have spoken to them again recently, as you would expect, and we look forward to hearing from them in due course. I will pause at that point and happy to take contributions from colleagues. I'll go to Teresa first.
Thank you, Vince. And as you've said, it's absolutely right that all of this information is in the public domain, and we do as much as we can across the council with our One Medway approach to understand where we've got challenges. And in adult social care, we've got a huge challenge with a worsening position on our overspend. But what I can be convinced, and what I can assure Cabinet, is that the investment that we've made in extra staffing, the investment that we've made in a restructuring is turning a result. Every time somebody, and there are about 500 people in long-term residential care in Medway, every time somebody has to go into long-term residential care, I am absolutely convinced that everything possible has been tried to prevent that happening for as long as it's safe to do so. I attend the panel that's in place. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had the whole of the Adult Social Care Division, 360 people, sharing ideas amongst teams, working together on the new initiatives, making sure that everybody knows what the other is doing. To keep these complex people as independent as possible for as long as possible, to involve their families and those who are caring themselves through our engagement programme in the way that we're looking after people and always looking for other things that we can do. And I'm satisfied that over time, and particularly with the introduction of Care for Medway that we will see later on, that the measures that we are taking will be successful. And alongside that, I mentioned earlier the deep dives that are going into the parts of the budget that we think we can improve on and make changes with. So, you know, nobody is resting on their laurels. No one's throwing their hands up in despair. Looking at the figures in this report, you would understand why people want to, but I think that our staff have the confidence that they will be supported to get on top of this. And of course, it's in the context of a national problem with Louise Casey doing a national review. She has started with safeguarding. She has absolutely highlighted that dementia needs more resourcing, and the spectre, and it is a spectre because nobody has turned it into reality, of a national scheme to tackle the way that we pay for social care is coming into that review. And I'm very pleased to say that through the Local Government Association, loads of ideas are pouring in. You know, Louise Casey isn't sitting in a room on her own. She's asking other people about what's happening. Our director of children and adults, Leanne Farrock, is very well connected across the country, bringing back information, ideas that she's heard about, sharing different ways of tackling this problem. So like all problems, you can be part of the solution, or you can say it's a problem and do nothing. And I'm as convinced as I can be, Cabinet, that everybody who's involved in adult social care, including myself, are doing just that, wanting to be part of the solution, coming forward with ideas, putting things into place. Always, always, first and foremost, focusing on the needs and well-being of those that we are taking care of, and importantly, the needs and well-being of those that might need taking care of the future, working to keep them independent and well and living well for as long as possible.
Thank you, Teresa. That's comprehensive, and I know lots of people will welcome those comments. See if there's any other Cabinet colleague who wishes to comment on this. Simon, please. Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
You want to use this?
That's better. Thanks very much, Vincent. I just probably just to add in comments that have been made a little bit throughout the last three reports, really, is about how open and transparent this process is. But this report itself highlights the real issues that we're trying to tackle with. And the root cause of these, as you mentioned at the start of what you were saying, lies in the fact that we had decades of underfunding. With the 91%, we're spending £1.3 million a day in order to recover the process that's embedded in our communities across the country as a result of some really seriously poor management on behalf of the previous Tory governments that we had to put up with. And to expect a Labour government and Labour administration, Labour government only been in place for less than 2 years, and the Labour administration here in Medway just over 3 years in place to have resolved and sort those problems in that time is unrealistic. However, we are on a journey here of achieving that, thanks to the amazing work by Teresa and her leadership in the adult social care side of things, as you've heard, and the teams of staff within the council. Things are starting to turn around, and you can see that in the figures that we're producing, and you can see all the figures writ large in the reports that we produced tonight, that the work is going on. It's complicated, it's expensive, it's really difficult to deliver, and it doesn't have results overnight. It takes time to recover from the problems that we had to face when we came into this administration. But we're on that journey, and we're starting to see some areas actually turning around and improving now, particularly in the areas of care. And the word care sits at the heart of virtually everything we say, because we do care. So I just wanted to highlight how important this work is, but also huge thanks to those involved. But it's not going to happen overnight. This is going to take time to recover, but we're on that journey. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see any other colleagues, so before we move to the vote, I say I want to absolutely endorse Teresa's comments around the level of work that's going on across the organisation on this sticky issue. And again, it is not unique to us, but we have to deal with the situation here in Medway. And as Teresa rightfully says, we have colleagues both from a political perspective, but also a senior officer perspective who are linked into conversations at a regional and national level, and that expertise can add to that. And from a functional perspective as well, greater collaboration between the finance team and the adult social care team to dig even deeper, look even more granular, which if you think about the two portfolio holders who lead that, that shows the level of commitment that we have as an administration to making this work for people. Of course, we always want to do the very best we can for Medway, and you can see that through the other reports within here. I don't want to lose the opportunity to recognise that, as well as some absolutely challenging figures, there are some very good performing parts of the council as well, particularly around income generation. And that sometimes, that balance, and I always go back to a really good example of this, is the Premiership membership of our sports and leisure facilities. This administration has frozen that price throughout our time, and we have seen membership increasing year on year, thanks to the two portfolios holders who have covered that in our administration. And we will continue to offer that outstanding service and recognise that residents say to us it's incredibly good value for money. So thank you for that. On that basis, I'll move the recommendations as laid out in the report. To those agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Let's move on then to item 10. Again, that sits with me. Move the recommendation, particularly 1.1. Again, this is a recommendation to full council. We'll be looking to add £7 million of anticipated capital receipts. So this will be funded from money from the capital receipts that we'll be receiving. And we know we are continuing to receive those through the disposal of properties, to be allocated both in this financial year and next financial year to fund the council's contribution towards the Programme Management Office, or the PMO, and the council's own LGR project team and the associated work streams. And the second recommendation is to delegate authority to myself and Richard to look at those on a case-by-case basis. The backdrop to this is very simple. With the exception of our fantastic new policy team, we have dealt with LGR with the existing resources, bearing in mind we are a pretty lean organisation to begin with. As we go through the next 23 months, that is not sustainable, and therefore this recommendation comes forward. It talks about some of the areas we think that those places of the council may be needed, but the reality is we will be looking at that, as the report says, almost on a case-by-case basis to understand where there perhaps might be people seconded to the Programme Management Office for the whole region. We may need to backfill there. They may be put into some specific bespoke pieces of work as we move towards the 1st of April 2028. And of course, one of the things I certainly recognise, and I know Cabinet colleagues do as well, is that our colleagues across the region will look to us because we are the only unitary authority in the region. Now, I'm not saying we do everything perfectly, not at all, but people will want to understand how a unitary authority works, and in particular, often perhaps how two sets of services work. So a really good example of that, there'll be one other council who's used to having public health, 12 other councils who are used to having housing. We know the benefit from having public health and housing together, particularly when you think about the Marmot Place programme that we're continuing to be on. So there'll be a whole element of that. You won't expect, and I hope nobody would expect at the council meeting in July, an absolutely defined list, because by the very nature of it, you know, we haven't done anything of this scale ever. Even the creation of our council was not to the same scale. So I think the information in here is the best it can be. My thanks to the team who have pulled this together. You can see on paragraph 10.2 the likely split of how the £7 million would be allocated. But again, that will be subject to final sign off from myself and Richard on a case-by-case basis. On that basis, I'll throw it open to colleagues for questions, comments, thoughts. Teresa, then Alex.
Thank you. And I think, you know, Vince, what you've said and what the report tells us is that this is about opportunity. The future of Medway as a council is going to be bigger and hopefully will continue to be brighter. Within that are lots and lots of opportunities for our staff and for future staff to come and for the staff in the other councils that we will be joining with. And along that journey, there are opportunities for people who are working now to get involved in the planning, in the design, in the way that the, you know, mechanics of the new council can work. So there's a lot of career development here for people, which I think is really important. If you want to do something well, it's got to be resourced. There's no question about that. And along with the 14 other councils, we have got to play our part. But for us, this is a leading role because we are the only unitary in Kent now. We know how to do things and we've been successful in doing things. I was a very new councillor back then on the new Medway authority, and I wanted to be part of a unitary authority. And I had seen, as a member of the public and as someone who worked in public services, all of the disadvantages of having a huge county council. And in Medway, including for some of the time anyway, even under the last administration, the advantages. And we've got people with organisational memory and practical experience of how this can be done. We've got people developing new ideas. So actually, in the whole spectrum of experience and opportunity, we've got those who have seen it all before and understand that it can work, those who are completely new to it and learning and can take an opportunity, and those to come who will be involved in the work of the bigger council. So for me, it's the right thing to do to resource it properly. It's the right thing to do to put a fair and open procedure in place for people to get involved and to give confidence to everybody that this is about development, it's about opportunity, it's about a bigger scale, because frankly, even from the beginning, Medway has always been a little bit small to punch its weight in the scheme of things in terms of garnering resources and being able to take part in what will eventually be regional government. So I think that it might be a bit, bureaucratic. I'm sure there are lots of people sitting at home who are tucking into a chicken tikka and not too worried about what I'm saying at this moment in time. But nevertheless, in the future, it will matter to them. And the services that can be delivered will matter, and we've got to get it right. And this is the steps along the way.
Thank you. I'm now hungry. Alex.
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, I'll be brief. As someone whose portfolio spans areas which in other parts of this region would be handled by different layers of government, it's bonkers. It really, those of us who see how well departments within our portfolios work together and for the better of people of Medway just can't imagine it being done any other way. And for that reason, I have some concern that maybe I will have to have some of the roles within my portfolio backfilled, because there is incredible expertise within those teams, and it's in the little things, it's the little fixes that happen that would be tricky if you had two local authorities potentially of different persuasions working against each other rather than working together. So, for example, when we have a safer, healthier streets scheme, when we have parking charges, that we're able to work together with the highways team to ensure that if there's, at the same time as new changes are being brought in regarding those schemes, that we're also able to make highways improvements to fix a particular section of road to make sure that that scheme runs a little bit better. And that would be a process that would be working between authorities in other places. It works between individual officers within the same team in this council They're experts in their field. Unitary authorities are quite clearly the efficient way to work, and our officers have the potential to, lead the way in showing the rest of the region of Kent how to do it properly.
Thank you. I can't see any other colleagues, so thank you for the really helpful contributions, Alex and Teresa. And you're absolutely right. Richard and I will sit there often at Kent Leaders, and there was a specific issue about a year ago where, in fact, more than a year ago, where the county council and the districts and boroughs for almost, I think it's 3 or 4 consecutive meetings, couldn't agree on something, which, as you say, Alex, would literally be people on next door desks in your team in this particular case. So I think, look, nobody here, and Teresa is right to recognise, actually, and as I said on the day after we got elected as the administration, one thing that Alan Jarrett was always right on was being an advocate for unitary authorities, because it's the only way to do local government. So this is the practicalities of recognising that only unitary authority in Kent will cease to exist, along with the other 13 councils. But until the 1st of April, I do think there will be, rightfully and understandably, colleagues coming to us to say, can we just understand how that works in a unitary setting? And I know that our teams will want to oblige, as well as always making sure the day job is done as well. So this will be the resources to make that happen. Of course, this will go to full council. We may well know on the day of full council what the new map will look like, so how many other people will be wanting to talk to us at that point, but it's right and appropriate we do this. I want to take a moment just to recognise that up until this point, very little additional resources been put in place. So lots of people, particularly several people around this table, have been doing LGR and the day job, and that is just not sustainable. So I'm pleased that we've got support for this. Thank you. We'll take it forward to council, and I would hope whatever individual councillors' views on LGR or a specific map, this is about making sure that we can play our part as we move forward into the next step. Are colleagues happy to agree to recommendations? Agreed. Thank you. I've had no indication colleagues will want to move into the blue papers on either of the next 2 items, so we'll move ahead. Gateway 1 procurement commencement, Innovation Park Medway South, Care for Medway. Teresa, over to you.
Thank you, Vince. And first of all, thank you to everyone who has got this project this far. So Cabinet, tonight you're being asked to agree the procurement of a design and build in a single stage procurement, and the reasons for that and the preferred option are being set out in paragraph 7.2.41 of this report. What we want to do is do this as quickly and as fairly as possible, because it's an imperative, and you can see that the project has got a contract time of 24 months. So we would hope that it would start to come out of the ground at the end of this year. Leading up to this, as people have heard me say before, we have brought in experts, we have looked at other facilities, we have soft tested the market about whether people are interested in building such a facility. There's huge interest, actually, because this is going to be, as people have heard me say, a gold standard facility. It will have discharge to assess beds, there will be therapeutic ability, respite ability, as well as, importantly, those 40 beds for complex dementia. And the design and build is important for our area as well. The Innovation Park Medway South sits on the gateway to our towns. And so the look and feel of this building, the surroundings of it, the landscaping are important in terms of the economic life of our towns. Care is a huge part of economic life. Lots of people work in it, lots of people benefit from it. There is a huge potential as well for innovation through assistive technologies, and our partners, Kindy, will be involved in helping us to manage and run the care home with assistive technology. So this is an incredibly important, tangible place to start. We've got to get somebody who is going to build this, who will look at the designs that are already in place from the consultants, who will understand what is required, concealed, safe outdoor spaces, for example, good conditions for staff to work in, proper arrangements for all of the services like cooking and laundry that will have to be in this building, and importantly, training facilities, and of course the management of everything around it on the busy A229. So I'm looking forward to the procurement. Already had a lot of interest. Single stage is the best way to do it. And this is the start of what will be, I hope, an accelerated journey to something that we can't afford not to do. Because unless we do this, nothing will change. And we will be prey to rising costs in the market and huge pressure from our hospital and other places in terms of getting people out of hospital and trying to, where it's safe to do so, return them home to continue to be independent. So I'm very excited about it. I hope that you will give this important first part of the last stage of this project your support, and look forward to it coming to planning as well, which will be happening in a couple of weeks' time. We've got to give ourselves planning permission to build this important facility, a sustainable, high-quality building, providing a fantastic service to our community and to our workforce, and consequently then to our local economy.
Thank you. Luella, then Simon.
Thank you, Teresa. I support it. We can't afford not to do it. Exactly those words are true. I've heard criticism with it's only so many beds. It's not enough. But if you were one of the families of a relative in the hospital who has no place to go because there's not anywhere available, and they're Medway people, you would be wishing this to happen as soon as possible because the need is there. Even if you filled, if you took where we had people waiting in corridors and people waiting around nurses' stations, that number you could fill this place with. So whatever the size of it, it's needed. It's much needed in Medway, and I look forward to it happening.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thank you, Teresa, for the report. And it's very exciting process that we're undertaking here. A couple of issues around it in terms of what this means for us as Medway, as a community. I've reflected a bit earlier on how we've only been here 3 years. And at the beginning of that 3-year process, the people of Medway put their trust in us by electing us to control the administration for this period of time. And at the heart of that was the slogan, Choose Change. Things when we couldn't carry on the same as it was before and do nothing and hope for the best kind of thing, approach to things of which we saw with the previous administration to a certain extent. And what we have done here, along with things like LGR and all the other issues that we're having to deal with, this is another process of that change. We are going to make a difference here with this building. I've reflected earlier this evening on how we know how to do these projects. We've done them. We know we've got a magnificent team of staff behind this who are doing a really brilliant job on bringing it forward to this stage. And we know that when it's built and when it's operating, it will make a huge difference, transformational difference to the lives of so many people for decades to come as a result of this investment. And that can only be the change that we were promising 3 years ago being implemented. So I really support this project. Thanks to everyone involved, and particularly to Teresa.
Thank you. Before I go back to Teresa, great that we've got this here. Fantastic to see. And I was at the planning presentation that was given to members on a cross-party basis. Some really interesting, helpful feedback, I thought. As always with planning, there's a bit of subjectivity around design, and we heard about that earlier on. I don't think this is quite brutalist architecture, but there'll be views, of course. But ultimately, I think this will absolutely be a positive for the community of Medway, but in particular, as you rightfully say, for the families and individuals whose life will be better than it currently is because of the available support through the Care for Medway programme when it is up and running in our community. So I will be very, very supportive of this, and I look forward to the tenders coming forward in due course. Teresa, back to you.
Thank you, everybody, for your support and your kind words and your understanding that this is the change. We've got to bring the change. We've got to be bold enough to do this. There are naysayers who are concerned about costs of paying the money back. Of course, when you borrow money, it has to be paid back. But this is a facility that will generate income. And I do want to give everybody assurance. It will open with a proper business case in place. We will understand and be open about how it will be managed, what our expectations are, how the pricing will be managed, the way that we will bring people into the facility, how we'll manage the staff. All of those things will be built into a business case that will be accountable for running this building. So it is incredibly important. It's something that will make a huge difference. The ability to have those discharged to assess beds, which are very, very, very hard to come by, everybody. The ability to offer respite and reablement therapy all in the same facility is a piece of innovation that will make it attractive to staff because they'll have different opportunities to do different things within the same building, and there we'll be keeping that community with complex dementia safe in the best possible surroundings. So I really look forward to people coming forward to help us build it, to watching it grow, watching it fill up, and making sure that this really will be the care that Medway needs and deserves.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you. We'll move to the penultimate item. Adam, over to you.
Thank you, Vince. And I'm pleased to move that the Cabinet agree to award the contracts for families who either have children already in care or who are on the edge of care, and it's an advocacy service for them. The idea is to try and support them to make sure that they can keep their children in their care, which is the best place for children growing up within Medway. Obviously, we've got 64,000 children within Medway, and approximately 500 are in care, and that includes foster care or like residential care at Eden House, etc., and work's going on in Even. And obviously, we have to pay significant amounts for some children to be in care outside of the borough. And of course, there are other boroughs who place children within Medway as well. So this contract, it's about £1 million per year over the next 3 years with the option to continue for a further year. It builds on the experience of coming towards the end of a 4-year contract for, which has been the present advocacy service for mothers with children either in care or on the edge of care. So we've got that experience over the last 4 years. And as well as being much better for the children involved, also for the parents involved by giving them that support, it's also, there is a significant amount of cost avoidance for the council as well. So approximately every child going into care costs £64,000 per year. Obviously, when it's needed, it's needed. And I know Vince has often mentioned that figure of £1.32 million that's spent every day, which goes towards those 3 main services, people services. So people in temporary accommodation, adult social care, we've heard from Teresa this evening, and obviously children's services as well. So I'd like to recommend that the provider, which has been mentioned in the exempt appendix, I won't go into further detail about that, but obviously they have looked carefully and compared what the providers who are offering to take on this service can actually provide. It's going to provide more local people in opportunity for more local people to be involved in and to take on jobs in employment. There's going to be improved skills, more opportunities for local, medium and small enterprises and the voluntary sector. And there will be social value embedded, and it's going to be creating ultimately a healthier community in line with the Marmot principles. So, working as part of the Family First agenda, the service will work in a multidisciplinary way to support families on the edge of care and those with children already in care, to build their strengths, so as to work with them to build their strengths and their emotional resilience. So it'll often tackle with them domestic violence. We know is a big problem within Medway. It will also, that's the main thing, like domestic violence, and the other one there is the mental health supports, but also anger management, which we know sadly affects many of our troubled families. So it's going to give them the confidence to access support and services to ensure that they can safely keep their children in their care. And this approach is in line with the government's Family First agenda. And I'd like to thank all the officers that have worked on this. I would ask for your support. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. I'll take Teresa first and then Tracy.
Thank you, Adam. And a more caring, aspirational dad to 64,000 children can't be found outside of you. I know that that's the way that you look at your portfolio. And this is a really good example of what a good parent would try and do for anybody in their family who are in trouble. Advocacy for these families does more than help them find help for all of the things that you've just mentioned, but it actually empowers them, because when you get into difficulty, navigating your way through the services, as good as we are at letting people know what's available to them, having the language to understand what is being on offer and where to go for help is an absolutely critical part of that picture. And, you know, whether we like it or not, there are people in a situation who just don't have that, who haven't had that exposure for one reason or another. And, you know, these things tie together. The children that we're talking about here, who can be better served by staying with their families, will turn into the NEETs of tomorrow if we don't take this kind of interventional action now. When we looked at the report from the Institute of Health Equity, low word recognition is one of the main reasons that people don't take opportunities in education and employment and training, because there isn't always a tradition in their families of understanding the way that those things are configured. That's on all of us to make sure that we widen that understanding, and advocacy done kindly, done firmly, on offer at an appropriate time is one of the ways that we can do it. So I'm really pleased about this. 29 children might not sound very many from the last project, but when you think that that has prevented a cost of £65,000 per year per child being added to the around 500 children that we already look after in care, we don't want that number to get any bigger. We want it to get smaller, and we want to make sure that people can stay in families. So the part of your big family, one big family for you, Adam, being taken care of by all of us, and here's an element that we can offer to make that more meaningful and more effective and optimistic than it is today.
Thank you. I'll take Tracy, then Nina.
Thank you. And thank you, Adam, for the work that you've done on this. And officers, I'm really pleased that we've gotten to this point. It's a last resort to remove children from their families, and we want to avoid that wherever we can. And for families who are on the verge of this happening, it can be very difficult to know what services they can access, to navigate the systems, to understand that help that they can get to support them, to keep the children, if we can do so safely, with them. And so this advocacy for parents who can help them to navigate that system, to access the support, which will mean that children are more likely to be able to stay with their family, which is the best outcome from them, is really to be welcome. So thank you for your work on it. I'm very, very pleased to see us get to this point.
Thank you. Now I'll take Nina.
I think Tracy summarized what I was going to say very beautifully, but once again, I would like to reiterate that Adam has the approach you've taken, and this initiative is very welcome. And we've already seen evidence that it doesn't only save the costs for the council, but on the other hand, if it is possible for children to safely remain with their families, then it is the right thing to do for us to support them. Of course, child safeguarding is everybody's concern, and there are appropriate child safeguarding as well as child protection processes in place. However, as my colleagues have also highlighted, it is so for some families who've never come across children's services, the language could be different. The whole processes can be quite confusing. So if an advocacy service helps them understand the professional concerns and help them understand that actually the involved professionals are there to also support them and listen to them, and most often also see them as experts in their own circumstances and see whether working with those circumstances and increasing the protective factors, mitigating the risks means that the children can safely, within the support network, still remain with their birth families, then I think it is the right thing to do. The other thing that I would like to applaud is the multidisciplinary approach in this as well, because children do not just, and their families don't live in isolation. It is the schools, the health professionals, the everybody, housing, welfare, etc. as well. So if everybody, by taking this approach, can really support the families, feel that okay, we can still manage, and then I think that's really why the community and the services exist, isn't it? And finally, I would like to say that in terms of long-term outcomes for children who are able to safely grow up and thrive in their own families, the outcomes for them is better than children in care. So yeah, because of all of these factors, I do welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nina. Before I go back to Adam, let me say a few things on this. This is really important, and we often use that phrase that Ofsted gave to us, that children matter in Medway. And one of the ways that we show that for the vast majority of children and young people is through our great partnership with the Medway Parent and Carers Forum. They're a great advocate for lots of families and young people, some of whom don't access any of our services, some of whom perhaps are just seeking some information, advice and guidance. Of course, what we're looking at here is a much smaller, much more focused set of young people and families. But absolutely, this is the right thing to do. As others have referenced, particularly paragraph 4.3, recognising that in many of these circumstances, not in all, but in many, the issue around anger management, domestic violence, mental health support for parents, I think that's to be absolutely welcomed. And I think back to some of the work that Teresa has been doing with a number of partners around that particular issue of domestic violence. I think this would be another added positive element to it. And it's one of those examples where we all care about the young people and the parents and families of Medway. But even if we didn't, even if we had no soul, no compassion, from a purely financial perspective, spending this money to save in the region of £7 million, if it's on the numbers that was with the original scheme, and my instinct is it will probably reach more families, from a financial perspective, this is the right thing to do as well. But for the avoidance of doubt, everybody around this table has compassion. Everybody around this table believes children matter in Medway, and this is another way that this administration are showing that. And again, as others have said, thanks to you, Adam, for your personal leadership, particularly for those families who, in the case we're looking at here, are on the edge of care. Not in every case. The thing we should probably say is that there will be occasions where this team will not be able to keep families out of care, and that's the right decision. But I would hope that that will be the minority of cases that they are involved in. And again, that certainly seems to be the case with the previous scheme that we've had beforehand. So Adam, back to you, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to, in closing, echo some of the points you made earlier on, which is the fact that we, within Medway Council, we are the existing unitary authority within Kent. And so we have had the benefit of being able to work in a joined up way between public health, housing is really important, education, social care. And by working together, we can really improve life chances of our most vulnerable children. And it is the most vulnerable families and the most vulnerable children that we're talking about. I'm also pleased that due to our work within children's social care, that we've been recognised to be one of 7 local authorities asked to take on the kinship care pilot. And this again will be a way of being able to keep children, not necessarily with their own particular parents, but within their family setting as well, by enabling those kinship carers to be able to be remunerated in the same way as if they were foster carers in their own right. And again, that will hopefully, those two things coupled together, along with the day-to-day work which children's social care do to support families at an early stage, will mean that we are building a society and children moving forward to becoming adults in the future. Less of them will be in NEETs, and they'll be around to be able to care for us as well, with all their qualifications and their skills that they're going to be taking on. So thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you, Adam. Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you. Let's then go back to page 25 for agenda item 5, the Medway Adult Education Annual Accountability Statement. Harinder, over to you.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you for the meeting to allowing the item to be deferred to the end. So I'd like to talk about the Medway Adult Education Annual Accountability Statement, which is full of soul, just like the previous item was as well. The annual accountability statement is always easier to be accountable for when we were 4% over delivered on our contract last year, and expecting to be 10% over delivery for this year. So it makes it that much easier. Of course, this is a statement that we're required to submit, but I'm sure we would have done it anyway. And it's part of our annual grant agreement. And the providers that are in the scope for this are all further education colleges, all sixth form colleges, all institutes for adult learning and designated institutions, and local authorities delivering post-16 provision in excess of £1 million. It's worth saying that there's very limited risk surrounding this accountability statement. There's clear guidelines as how this should be set out and what's to be included, and these have been followed as it was previous in the previous year. In fact, it follows the same format for the previous 2 years that were approved. The statement demonstrates also, importantly, very clear links with important strategies that include the skills employability plan for Medway and the Get Kent and Medway working plan and the local skills improvement plan, which was also referenced in the cabinet meeting earlier. We have had to change the priorities, as Vince, you've pointed out many times that the government's priority is growth. So the change of priorities through Medway Education is also growth. So the priorities have changed accordingly. And also to ensure quality, and also there are targets that are laid out in the plan as well, which are there for everyone to look through. I'll pause here for anyone to comment. Other than that, I will move it if no one has anything to say.
Thank you. I'll take Tracy, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Harry, for presenting this report. I've very recently handed over Medway Adult Education to Harinder, so I've worked very closely with Dan, and I just want to say that Dan and his team do a fantastic job with Medway Adult Education. Despite cuts in funding from government, they have over-delivered. They have met the rising demand that we have for a huge range of classes, training ranging from pottery through to English, for speakers of other languages, to basic maths and English skills, and so many different varieties for people across Medway. I'm really pleased, however, that we as an administration have managed to continue to provide funding so that they will be able to carry on offering those courses to our adults in Medway who want to upskill, who will find that this will make a huge difference in their employment prospects and their ability to support their children with their home learning and across the board. So thank you very much for the report and well done to Dan Ratcliffe and his team.
Thank you. Teresa.
Yeah, can I echo everything that Harinder and Tracy have just said? And thank you, Tracy, for your leadership hitherto. And Harinder, you're lucky to be taking over such a great and vibrant service. I just wanted to remind everybody watching that there's an open day for adult education on Saturday in Rochester. It starts, I think, around 11 o'clock, and it's an opportunity for people to go and see all those fantastic skills on offer that are on offer in different parts of Medway. To meet that team, last year the choir sang, and we had a look at the lovely sensory garden there, had some tasty treats as well, and got lots of people signing up for the new term in September. I'm sure that'll happen again on Saturday. I'll be popping down to do a bit of cheerleading and have a look at what's going on, and hope that other people will take the opportunity to do that too.
Thank you. I'll take Luella, then Alex.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy and Harinder, for this report. I found it really interesting to read. One of the particular things that jumped out at me was how the number of adults with no formal qualifications in Medway has fallen over time, but is now below the national average. So I was really pleased to see that. And also it highlights there about the English and maths, how they're delivering such high-level, entry-level English and maths, plus the pathways to GCSEs. Not everyone wants to do it, but it's available there. But also their connection, the adult education, along with Medway Development Company, with OHOB, our pre-employment training that comes along with my portfolio, and how they've been really good at sharing that pathway to employment with people, because we've seen this week even another phase of young people who are going there doing this pre-employment course with a real prospect of a real job and a real career in groundwork and construction, and that is being really pushed out to people and shared widely by Medway Adult Education. So I just wanted to recognise that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex.
Yeah, just want to celebrate the value of adult education. You know, as the son of an FE lecturer, it's something that's very close to home, and seeing the value that my dad was able to provide to adult learners over the years, as well as those learning a trade. And it's something that I have had the benefit from myself over the years as a young journalist, sort of wrestling with T-line shorthand in an evening class, to professional development courses through my trade union. But actually the most valuable adult education experience I can think of was here in Medway, when probably about a decade ago I was able to do a pottery course as a complete beginner, and that was such a valuable thing. And I think that, you know, when you look at page 40 where it talks about the local needs duty, we can talk about NEETs and we can talk about the assistance that it provides for getting people into employment, but actually the fact that we contribute effectively to the health and well-being of residents in Medway, both mental and physical health, is really critical. You know, in an age where we've become much more atomised as a society, we doom scroll on our phones, the opportunity to actually pause and learn a new skill with other local people, and the opportunities to reduce isolation that people might experience is really valuable. So even if it achieved none of those other really important things, I think that the fact that we are increasing the well-being of Medway residents by giving them these opportunities is reason enough to do this, and I commend the report.
Thank you very much. Before I go back to, Nina, please, yes.
Just wanted to add that last year I was invited to the ESOL program, where the the graduates from the ESOL program had this lovely ceremony, and I'm sure Harinder and Tracy might have gone or will be invited. But one thing that stood out at the ceremony where graduates of the ESOL language were saying English speakers of other language, basically the course. They were saying that attending the language and going up the levels had given them the confidence to go out and actually volunteer in the local communities. And as Alex has pointed out, it didn't just raise their self-esteem and supported their social sort of inclusion and cutting down the social isolation, but the ability to give back, which they wanted to do, was enabled through coming to the lessons. And they said it was really empowering for them. And some of them had, in their volunteering roles, impressed them, the employers or the managers so much that the managers were happy to provide references for them, so that when they applied for jobs, one or two of them actually said that they had secured employment. So they're kind of economically active as well and giving back to our local economy. And through hearing their stories, the other graduates of the courses were also really motivated to utilize their learned skills to go out and volunteer. So I just thought that was such a positive difference that Medway adult education is making. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. The stories of Medway adult education are rich and deep, and not to give a spoiler alert for the next Medway Matters, if you want to see some of the history, because actually we've been doing adult education for 120 years. So watch out for that in the next Medway Matters. And I agree with everything that everyone around the table has said. The team do a fantastic job of outreach. So at any community event, not just necessarily a Medway Council run community event, Medway Adult Education are often seen to be there to just make people aware of the offer available. I'm incredibly proud that we've been able, in part through the Crisis and Resilience Fund, to ensure building up that individual resilience through education, that we've been able to continue to fund a number of courses which may otherwise have not continued. And we've spoken a lot tonight in different contexts around local government reorganisation and what people will be looking for from the new councils. I'm really clear that there are two stark choices of the current offer of adult education across the region. I know which one I would be advocating, and it's ours. And I don't say that just because it's ours. I say that because the delivery, the passion, the commitment, the improvement, the self-improvement, the feedback from learners is outstanding. Ofsted, and it's not always been that case, I have to say. A few years back, the Ofsted was pretty poor for that service. It's continued to grow from strength to strength. So huge thanks to Tracy for the work that she's done in the portfolio, and a huge thanks to Harinder for the work he will continue to do. And of course, as others have said, Dan Ratcliffe and the team do an outstanding job, and we're incredibly proud of the work that they do. And although this is quite a bureaucratic requirement, it gives us a really great opportunity to recognise all of those things. Harinder, back to you.
Yep. So to support those comments, and thank you everyone for all of those comments. Alex, you're absolutely right. And Nina, the social isolation and the mental health and well-being aspect of adult education is so important that it's right at the top of the, if you were to go into Dan Ratcliffe's office and have a look at the top of his of his whiteboard, it's right there, right at the top. It's one of the outcomes that he's constantly focusing on, constantly looking at. And Councillor Prenter, you're absolutely right as well in terms of the destination, the pathway that people reach and how adult education can help with that. Even in previous years, I think it's something close to 90% of those that have gone through through Medway Adult Education have had like a positive outcome as a result of the programme, whether that is continued education or whether that is some kind of form of employment. And absolutely, all of which are what I've said wouldn't be possible without Dan and his team. So more power to them. And so with that, moving item, I think it's a 1.1, is it? Yeah, well, not item, sorry, 0.1.1. Thank you.
Thank you. Are the recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That finishes tonight's Cabinet meeting. Have a good rest of your night. Thank you.